بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. We reached page 26. The author says Al-Aziz. In other words, the second type of Khabar al-Ahad, according to the author, the second type of hadith which is considered Ahad and not Mutawatir, is that which is called Al-Aziz. Al-Aziz, Ayn, Zay, Ya, and another Zay. Like one's name, Abdul Aziz. Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Aziz, wa huwa Al-Aziz al-Hakim. He says Al-Aziz. أولا تعريفه لغة هو صفة مشبهة من عز يعز بالكسر أي قل وندر، أو عز يعز بالفتح أي قوي واشتد، وسمي بذلك إما لقلة وجوده وندرته وإما لقوته بمجيئه من طريق آخر. The first point of discussion with regards to Al-Aziz is what it means. And hopefully the student and the disciple can pay attention to this consistent theme and this consistent style of, before we get into the ruling of a thing, the types of a thing, where we find a thing, who said this, who said that, we get into the actual definition of the thing. We deal with the technical definition and the proper conceptualization and understanding of the word from it being a word before it becoming a list of rulings, branches, before it becomes an issue of khilaf, of ijma, etc. So he says that the word Aziz linguistically means or is derived from the verb Azza ya'izzu. Azza being the fi'l madi and ya'izzu being the fi'l mudari' with a kasra vowel sound. He says, and this means qalla wa nadar, that something is scarce, something is rare, something is hard to find, like an antique, something that's out of print, something that's very, very hard to come across. He says, or it means, or it is derived from azza ya'azzu, the fi'l mudari having a fatha vowel sound over the ayn. And that has the meaning of qawiya washtad, for something to become strong, for something to be formidable, for something to be or to become powerful. So therefore, it's either pertaining, he says, and that's because it became strong by having another route, another isnad, another reporter. So the first meaning is that it's rare and scarce, and the second meaning linguistically is that it's strong. He says, ba istilahan أن لا يقل رواته عن اثنين في جميع طبقات السند. As far as its technical meaning, then it is the hadith that doesn't have any less than two narrators in all levels of the isnad. It doesn't have no less than two in each and every level of the sanad. It doesn't say that it only has two, but no less than two. And not in one tabaqah, but he says all of the tabaqat. And we've explained before what the word tabaqah is. The layer. The companion is a tabaqah. The tabi is a tabaqah. The follower of the tabi is a tabaqah. وهكذا. The author, he then says, ثانيا شرح التعريف. What is the explanation of this definition? Another very important tool for learning, studying, and teaching is that memorizing technical terms is not enough. Memorizing technical terms is not enough if you don't have the ability to explain it. Even if it's in your own words. If you don't have the ability to make it make sense, to break it down in your own expression. And when you can break something down in your own expression and make it make sense to someone who's not a specialist in that field, or someone who isn't necessarily a student of, someone who's not a Muslim, it proves that you have reached a good level of understanding of that thing and mastery of that thing. So anyhow, the author, he says, يعني أن لا يوجد في طبقة من طبقات السند أقل من اثنين. إما, he says, this means that the minimum amount of narrators in each tabaqah is two. أما إن وجد في بعض طبقات السند ثلاثة فأكثر فلا يضر. As far as if it's more than two in some of the levels of the chain, لا بأس لا يضر, nothing wrong with that. بشرط أن تبقى ولو طبقة واحدة فيها اثنان لأن العبرة لأقل طبقة من طبقات السند. He says with one condition is that at least one طبقة, one level has two. He says, and that's because the ibrah is the condition here, he says, is that with aqal, with the least. خيرا إن شاء الله. The author, he says, هذا التعريف هو الراجح كما حرره الحافظ ابن حجر. وقال بعض العلماء إن العزيز هو رواية اثنين أو ثلاثة فلم يفصله عن المشهور في بعض سوره. So therefore, this definition, the author says, is the correct view. It's the correct definition. And this was the position that was taken and was defended and debated on by Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, rahimahullah. Other ulama, they say that the Aziz is the hadith that has 2 or 3 reporters in the tabaqah. Obviously not making it a big difference, or making a big difference between it and between the mashhur hadith. Moving forward. ثالثا مثاله, number 3. He says an example of it. ما رواه الشيخان من حديث أنس والبخاري من حديث أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من والده وولده والناس أجمعين. The narration that's been collected by Al-Bukhari and Muslim, reported by Anas radiallahu anhu, and also the narration that's been reported by Al-Bukhari on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that the Messenger of Allah said, you can't be a believer until you love me more than anything or everything. More than anything or everything else besides me. The hadith says his walid, meaning father, also mother as well. Waladihi, his son, meaning daughter as well. وَالنَّاسِ أَجْمَعِينَ, and all people. He says, وَرَوَاهُ عَنْ أَنَسْ وَقَتَادَةَ. He says, وَرَوَاهُ عَنَسْ قَتَادَةُ وَعَبْدُ الْعَزِيزِ ibn Suhaib. He says, as far as the first tabaqah, then that's obviously Anas. From the reporters who took this hadith and narrated from Anas was Qatada and Al-Aziz ibn Suhaib. How many are them? Well, those are 2. And obviously we just mentioned before that Abu Hurairah also narrated it. So Abu Hurairah and Anas are 2. From Anas is Qatada and Al-Aziz ibn Suhaib, who are 2, once more. He says, رواه عن قتادة سعيد أو شعبة وسعيد. And then there are other 2 narrators who reported it from Qatada, and they are Shu'bah and Sa'id, meaning Ibn Abi Aruba. ورواه عن عبد العزيز إسماعيل بن علية وعبد الوارث. And from those people who reported from Abdul Aziz ibn Suhaib was Ismail ibn Ulayya and Abdul Warith. ورواه عن كل جماعة. He says, and from each and every one of those narrators, a group of people came. The highlighting point is the number 2. The author then says, رابعا أشهر المصنفات فيه. The most popular or famous books written on the topic. لم يصنف العلماء مصنفات خاصة للحديث العزيز والظاهر أن ذلك لقلته ولعدم حصول فائدة مهمة من تلك المصنفات. The scholars, he says, they have not written extensively on the topic. He says, rather, they don't have specific books on the topic. And that seems apparent. It's obvious that the reason why they didn't do this is because, number one, the hadith is extremely rare, hard to find, or it's not a big benefit that can be taken from writing a book on the topic. So, before we move forward and go on to Al-Ghareeb, because that concludes the study of Al-Aziz, following things we like to bring up. Number one, what's the purpose of the Aziz Hadith? What's the purpose of classifying the Aziz Hadith? First and foremost is perhaps it has a miza, a means of distinction over a hadith which isn't aziz, like the one we're about to mention, which is ghareeb. Perhaps it has a distinction over the ghareeb because two people reporting it is hypothetically better than one person reporting it, even though that's just hypothetical. The Ghareeb Hadith could be more authentic than the Aziz Hadith, which we'll get into later, inshallah. Second thing we like to bring up briefly is, or the second reason why the ulama, some of the ulama of Mustalah mention this type of hadith as a class, is min bab al-tafannun. Is an art form in the science. Classifying it, there's a different type as people classify other things. This is a different species. This bird looks just like the other bird, but it's a bit different. It's a subtle difference. Now, the average person may not appreciate it and value it, but the expert, the one who studies birds, who watches birds, he can respect and understand the concept of art and the concept of classifying things that have subtle differences between them. Now, the last thing we're going to bring up briefly are some of the critical questions that we brought up with regards to the mutawatir and with regards to the mashhur. And that is, if a thing is so rare and so scarce, if a thing doesn't have a big, real, tangible benefit, then what's the purpose of a person busying him or herself in? And was it something that was known to the ulama of hadith of the early generations or not? Or was it something that was foreign, something that crept in to the sciences of hadith via the hands of the fuqaha, via the hands of the people of usul, via the works of the ash'ira and ahl kalam, ahlul mantiq, and list goes on. We don't want to get into none of those difficult technical things because that's unsuitable for the beginner. The third and final type of khabar al-ahad, according to the author, he says Al-Ghareeb. He says Al-Ghareeb, the hadith which is Ghareeb. غين راء ياء نباء الغريب. أولا تعريفه لغة هو صفة مشبهة بمعنى المنفرد أو البعيد عن أقاربه. باء اصطلاحا هو ما ينفرد برواية راو واحد. As far as its linguistical meaning, then it is extracted from something or someone who is munfarid, which means sole or isolated, alone, by itself, single. Or it means al-ba'id an-aqaribihi, is one who is far from his relatives and family members. Far from one's relatives and one's family members. Ghareeb. Basically meaning like a stranger, a foreigner, an out-of-towner, someone who's an alien, someone who's not from a place. He has no friends, no relatives near or with him. That's what the word linguistically means. Like we say, kun fi dunya ka'annaka ghareeb. It states in the narration, be in this world as if you're a ghareeb, a stranger. As far as its technical meaning, then it is the hadith that is only reported by one narrator. So we can see here systematically, mutawatir doesn't necessarily have a specific number. We see here that the mashhur is based off of 3 as the minimum. Aziz is based off of 2 as the minimum. And the Ghareeb is actually 1. Khairan inshallah. ثانيا شرح التعريف. The explanation of this definition. A هو الحديث الذي يستقل بروايته شخص واحد إما في كل طبقة من طبقات السند أو في بعض طبقات السند ولو في طبقة واحدة ولا تضر الزيادة عن واحد في باقي طبقات السند لأن العبرة للأقل. The author says this basically means Ghareeb hadith is a hadith that is only reported by one narrator, either in all levels of its isnad or only in one level of its isnad. Just like we mentioned with regards to the Aziz, not mashhur. We said that the mashhur has to be, or very similar as well, has to be no less than 3 in each tabaqa, and not necessarily Can't be more. The Ghareeb, he's saying that it has one rawi, one reporter. Whether it's in all tabaqat, one sahabi, one tabi'i, one follower of the tabi'i, etc. Or if it's just one sahabi, 5 tabi'in, etc. Or if it's just 5 sahabi, 10 tabi'in, and let's say, for example, only one of the atba' tabi'in took from those 10. وهكذا. He says that's what's meant here, as we're basing it off of the minimum and not the maximum. Number 3, the third point of study, he says, تسمية ثانية له. يطلق كثير من العلماء على الغريب اسما آخر هو الفرد على أنهما مترادفان وغاير بعض العلماء بينهما فجعل كلا منهما نوعا مستقلا لكن الحافظ بن حجر يعتبرهما مترادفين لغة واصطلاحا إلا أنه قال إن أهل الاصطلاح غايروا بينهما من حيث كثرة الاستعمال وقلته فالفرد أكثر ما يطلقونه على الفرد المطلق والغريب أكثر ما يطلقونه على الفرد النسبي. He says here another name or another title for the hadith ghareeb, and that is that which is known as fard. Fard, fa, ra, del. A fatha vowel sound over the fa, a sukoon over the ra, fardun. He says some ulama consider them to be synonymous, the same, and others say is a difference between the two. It's a difference between the two. Hafidh ibn Hajar says that they are the same. He says they are synonymous in language and in the actual terminology. In the language and in the terminology. He says here, he said that the ulama of mustalah, they say that there's a difference between the two with regards to how often the term is used, and how seldom or how random the term is used. So he says, whenever they say fard, in most cases they're talking about an absolute ghareeb. And whenever they say ghareeb, in most cases they're talking about a fard nisbi, a restricted or relative ghareeb. And we're going to get into that bid'in very soon. So just be patient, inshallah. رابعا أقسامه. Number 4, the types of ghareeb. The author says, يقسم الغريب بالنسبة لمواضع التفرد فيه إلى قسمين هما غريب مطلق وغريب نسبي. He says here that the Ghareeb Hadith is divided into 2 categories, 2 types. The first is that which is known as Ghareeb Mutlaq, absolute Ghareeb. And the second is that which is known as Ghareeb Nisbi, or relative Ghareeb. ألف الغريب المطلق أو الفرد المطلق تعريفه هو ما كانت الغرابة في أصل سنده أي ما ينفرد بروايته شخص واحد في أصل سنده. He says, as far as the first type, which is called Ghareeb Mutlaq, absolute Ghareeb, then it is the hadith in which the strangeness, the gharaba, the concept of only one reporter, one narrator, is found in the asl of the sanad. The asl, meaning the foundation of the sanad. Only one reporter. Now we know that the ulama of mustalah, they differ on what's meant by asl sanad. Is the asl sanad the direction from which the sahabi starts? Or is the direction from which the hadith became collected and put into circulation? Some scholars say this, others say that. The author, as we've clearly seen, his entire book is based off of the works of Al-Hafidh bin Hajar, specifically Nukhbat al-Fikr, and specifically Nuzhat al-Nadar, and the different books like this, Taqreeb, Al-Tahdhib, Al-Isaba, so on and so forth. So obviously Al-Hafidh bin Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, as if he leans towards or says that it is الطرف الذي فيه صحابي, is the direction of the companion. What's important is obviously is going to make a difference when we're explaining in English. Because if you say asl sanad, you say only one companion, or you say asl sanad, meaning only one person, alladhi alayhi taduru al-asanid, the one around whom all isnads orbit. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. So that's ghareeb mutlaq. مثاله حديث إنما الأعمال أو إنما الأعمال بالنيات تفرد به عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه هذا وقد يستمر التفرد إلى آخر السند وقد يرويه عن ذلك المتفرد عدد من الرواة. An example of ghareeb mutlaq or the fard mutlaq is the hadith إنما الأعمال بالنيات. These are only based on intentions. He says this hadith was only reported by Umar al-Khattab, meaning that's a tabaqa. The tabaqa of the Sahaba, he says, is only reported by Umar ibn al-Khattab. He then says, back to the translation, he says, and this tafarrud could continue to the entire isnad, to the end of the sanad. Or the one who made the tafarrud, a large number of people could report from him. So let's say hypothetically that only Umar radiallahu anhu narrated from the Sahaba that tabaqa. What's the next tabaqa? The tabaqa of the tabi'een. Well, we have 20 or 50. Obviously, it can't be mashhur. Obviously, it can't be aziz. And it can't be mutawatir. But it's still ghareeb. Alright? So, I don't know why the author mentioned that. Whereas, if he's saying that, then that's going to be ghareeb nisbi. Because it's not the entire sanad. Khair, inshallah. Moving forward. The author, he says here, Al-Ghareeb Nisbi أو الفرد النسبي. He says هو ما كانت الغرابة في أثناء سنده أي أن يرويه أكثر من راو في أصل سنده ثم ينفرد بروايته راو واحد عن أولئك الرواة. He says the relative fard is that hadith is the narration, the report, in which the gharaba, the strangeness, solidarity, or whatever you want to call it, is reported or is in the athna' sanad, in the middle of the chain, or not in the asl. Whether it's at the end or the middle, al-muhim, it's not in the asl. Okay, whereas we have more than one reporter who reports it. He says, أن يروي أكثر من راو في أصل سنده. Now listen carefully to the author's speech. He says, in the asl of the sanad, there's more than one narrator. Let's say 3 companions. And then out of the middle of nowhere comes one narrator, one tabi'i. So you have Ali radiallahu anhu, for example, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, for example, and let's say Samurah ibn Jundub radiallahu anhu, for example. Then comes Hasan al-Basri, and he's the only one who reports from all 3 Sahabi. So according to what the author is saying, this will be fard nisbi, because the asl sanad is not ghareeb, but the gharaba happened later on. Khairan inshallah. مثاله حديث مالك عن الزهري عن أنس رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم دخل مكة وعلى رأسه المغفر تفرد به مالك عن الزهري. He says an example of this is the hadith of Malik from Zuhri from Anas رضي الله عنه, that the Prophet ﷺ once entered Mecca, and upon his head was the mighfar, was the helmet. He was wearing a helmet. He says this hadith is only reported by Malik from Zuhri. Malik from Zuhri. In other words, before Zuhri, it may not necessarily be ghareeb, but Malik was the only one, he was the sole reporter from Zuhri. Khairan inshallah. He then says, سبب التسمية سمي هذا القسم بالغريب النسبي لأن المتفرد وقع فيه بالنسبة إلى شخص معين. He says the reason why it's called fard nisbi, relative ghareeb, relative fard, is because the gharaba took place with regards to one person, one direction. Khairan inshallah. The 5th topic of study of the Ghareeb Hadith, he says, من أنواع الغريب النسبي هناك أنواع من الغرابة أو التفرد يمكن اعتبارهما من الغريب النسبي لأن الغرابة فيها ليست مطلقة وإنما حصلت الغرابة فيها بالنسبة إلى شيء معين وهذه الأنواع هي. He says there are other subdivisions, subcategories, subdefinitions of the Ghareeb Nisbi, the relative Ghareeb. And that's because the Tafarrud or the Gharaba is not absolute, but it only happened in a specific place with regards to a person, a location. These include the following. Number one, تفرد ثقة برواية الحديث كقولهم لم يروه ثقة إلا فلان. The first is when a thiqah, trustworthy, reliable narrator, which we'll get into the definition of who a thiqah is, and as we have explained who a thiqah is in our lessons on Al-Bayquniyah, and also in some of our lessons on Nukhbat al-Fikr, he says it is the hadith in which one thiqah reports. Like some of the ulama of hadith say, no thiqah reported except for fulan. Meaning there are other narrators, but they're not thiqat, they're weak. خير إن شاء الله. باء تفرد راو معين عن راو معين. He says one specific narrator only narrating from one specific narrator. One specific narrator being the sole reporter from a specific narrator. كقولهم تفرد به فلان عن فلان وإن كان مرويا من وجه أخرى عن غيره. That's what it says here in the book. It says وجه أخرى. Perhaps that's a printing mistake, a typo, or perhaps it means to say من وجه آخر على الجادة والله أعلم. He says here, and that is like when they say, يعني the ulama of hadith, تفرد به فلان عن فلان, that fulan is the only person who narrated from fulan, so and so. Even though the hadith is reported from other routes, from other people, but no one else reported from this narrator except for this one. Jim, number 3. تفرد أهل بلد أو أهل جهة is when we have the inhabitants of a specific country, a specific region, a specific region, not reason, a specific city or town, etc. And they're the only ones who report this hadith. كقولهم, like when they say تفرد به أهل مكة أو أهل الشام. They say only the people of Mecca, the Meccans, or Ahl Sham, the Syrians, they're the only ones who reported this hadith. Not one person, not from one specific person, but the people of a country. This hadith is only found among the Shami narrators, the Hijazi narrators, the Iraqi narrators. وهكذا. He says, دال تفرد أهل بلد أو جهة عن أهل بلد أو جهة أخرى, is that when we have people of a country, people of a region, of a town, of a section, reporting specifically from another people of another country, another town, another region. كقولهم تفرد به أهل البصرة عن أهل المدينة. Like when they say, when the ulama say that the people of Basra in Iraq are the ones who solely reported it from the people of Medina. أو تفرد به أهل الشام عن أهل الحجاز. All the people of Sham solely reported from the people of Hijaz. خير inshallah. Number 6, the author says تقسيم آخر له. قسم العلماء الغريب من حيث غرابة السند أو المتن إلى ألف غريب متنا وإسنادا والحديث الذي تفرد برواية متنه راو واحد. باء غريب إسنادا لا متنا كحديث روى متنه جماعة من الصحابة انفرد واحد بروايته عن صحابي آخر فيه يقول الترمذي غريب من هذا الوجه. Another categorization of Ghareeb. He says the ulama further divide Ghareeb into 2 more categories. First is, obviously he's talking about with regards, he says here, with the sanad and the matan, the 2 parts. The first is a hadith that is only reported by one. It's considered Ghareeb, whether it's nisbi, mutlaq, whatever the case may be. The isnad and the matan. The isnad and the matan. Or, not, that's not even necessarily a good example. Al-Muhim, with regards to the nisbi, is one narrator, and it's the only place in which we can find this matan, period. And it's the only place in which we can find this isnad, period. Secondly, he says, is the hadith which has a Ghareeb isnad, but not a Ghareeb matan. The text can be found by another companion, but it's only one isnad with regards to this one. Alright, he says there is a large number of Sahaba, a Jama'ah of the Sahaba reported it. Alright, انفرد واحد بروايته عن صحابي آخر. But we have one narrator who comes and reports it from another companion. And this is the area or the time in which At-Tirmidhi says, غريب من هذا الوجه. It's a strange hadith, a sole hadith from this route, from this chain. خيرا inshallah. The 7th section, the author says, من مظان الغريب أي مكان وجود أمثلة كثيرة له. He says, what is the place, or what are the places in which we can find a lot of Ghareeb hadiths? Which the Ghareeb hadith is popular and it's abundant, it's a lush pasture, a rich feeding grounds of the Ghareeb hadith. He says, Alif, Musnad al-Bazzar. Number 1 is the Musnad of Imam al-Bazzar, al-Bahr al-Zakhar. Ba, al-Mu'jam al-Awsat al-Tabarani is the Mu'jam al-Awsat of Imam al-Tabarani. And inshallah, hopefully we have enough time later on to get into who are these great ulama, al-Bazzar and al-Tabarani. Number 8, last but not least, he says, أشهر المصنفات فيه. What are the most popular books on the topic, specifically on the topic? Alif, Ghareeb Malik lid-Daraqutni. The first is the hadith called Ghareeb Malik. The Ghareeb narrations of Imam Malik was authored by Imam al-Daraqutni. Ba, Al-Afrad lid-Daraqutni أيضا. Secondly is the book called Al-Afrad of al-Daraqutni as well. Jim, last but not least, he says, السنن التي تفرد بكل سنة منها أهل بلدة لأبي داود السجستاني is a book written by Abu Dawood, the author of a Sunan, which is called the Sunan, the hadiths that are only reported by a specific people of a specific region or town or location. So that's the end of the chapter with regards to Ghareeb, and also with regards to the first way of categorizing Khabar al-Ahad, with regards to how many isnads, how many turuq. Later, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, in the next lesson, the author is going to say, تقسيم خبر الآحاد بالنسبة إلى قوته وضعفه. A further categorization of it, and that is categorizing Khabar al-Ahad with regards to its strength and its weakness, and not the number of isnads, the strengths and its weaknesses. As we said before, and to keep things easy and simple, just because a hadith is mashhur or aziz or ghareeb doesn't mean that it's authentic, doesn't mean that it's not authentic. But in the beginning, it's based off of the basic conditions of hadith being accepted or not. Last but not least, for further studies and further referencing, all right, those who wish to go and look for it themselves, even though we're beginners here, is the concept of, is it bad to report a Ghareeb hadith? Is it a negative thing? Is it a bad thing to report a Ghareeb hadith? And what happens to a reporter when he keeps making Ghareeb narrations? Right now, starting off in the beginning, what's important is that whatever fulfills and satisfies the conditions of a Sahih hadith is considered to be Sahih in the beginning. In the beginning. Allah knows best. Thank you very much for listening. Jazakumullahu khairan. Until the next lesson.